Donald Trump, being the socialist that he is, had to beat Bernie. So Donald Trump went out and recommended that interest rate caps be set to 10%.
Mark Cuban is making the rounds on cable news, arguing that Trump is a socialist and Kamala is the more reasonable candidate. Let's take a look at TYT's coverage and react. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to help my channel grow. Thank you.
The fact that he's even suggesting price controls and price caps is socialism 101. You haven't heard that from the vice president. You have heard that from Donald Trump.
Interest rate caps stop the bank from charging you over a certain percentage of interest, which means you save money and pay less on your credit card payment.
So what I'm getting is that Mark Cuban is so out of touch that he thinks that what he just said is going to hurt Donald Trump.
Right.
And that what Donald Trump would want to do with capping interest rates for credit cards at 10%, by the way, which is not a small amount, that's socialism, which obviously it's not.
It is not.
Trump's approach is a push for lower interest rates through a cap on credit card costs and deregulation aimed at stimulating economic growth. In contrast, Harris focuses on consumer protections and regulatory oversight to ensure fair lending practices. Neither candidate has been very specific about this.
Yeah, so first of all, there used to be laws against usury, and what that meant is you charge too much interest that is unpayable. That was called loan sharking. And that was a serious crime that mobsters and gangsters did. So they took away those laws. Now you could charge almost anything you want, and they'll charge 200% interest, et cetera, which no one could possibly pay back. To be fair, Donald Trump does know that because he took out a 14% interest rate for the Taj Mahal, one of his casinos in Atlantic City. It bankrupted that casino and then caused the dominoes, which caused all three of his casinos in Atlantic City to fall. So he knows 14% is not doable, even if you're a so-called billionaire.
It is true that Trump filed bankruptcy on his casinos due to high interest debt and declining revenue. Furthermore, Trump did finance the casino using junk bonds with higher than average interest rates.
Mark Cuban and the rest of the establishment not realizing that people want lower interest payments on their credit card payments.
Thank you.
That's not complicated.
Who in their right mind wouldn't enjoy paying less interest besides the people who are making money from it?
Inflation is what we call it. And when you have corporate record profits, it is just price gouging.
Inflation is a complex phenomenon driven by factors like supply chain disruptions, the war in Ukraine, the lingering effects of COVID-19. There is an argument to be made that inflation is price gouging considering corporate profits have never reached this high.
But when I heard he was comparing Trump to Bernie, I thought, oh, well, that must be because Donald Trump launched his campaign in 2015, campaigning on single-payer healthcare. Let's not forget, Donald Trump talked about it in all the debates in 2015, the advantages of single-payer healthcare, before he realized he had a chance to win, and now he calls that socialism.
Trump campaigned in 2016 claiming everybody's going to get covered, suggesting the government would take care of healthcare costs. However, after winning the presidency in early 2017, Trump began criticizing universal healthcare systems. Trump made bold promises about providing universal coverage through a better and cheaper healthcare plan. He ultimately failed to deliver a specific proposal.
I'm actually a lot warmer to tariffs than everyone in the Democratic side, which is shocking because Democrats used to be in favor of tariffs and Republicans used to be like 100% free trade. So things are kind of realigning in a weird way.
Both Democrats and Republicans have increasingly embraced tariffs as a strategy to safeguard American manufacturing.
Tariffs aren't unique to President Trump. President Biden has tariffs in place. He's actually looking to potentially implement more. Where do you come out on? Is there a good tariff, a bad tariff?
Well, part of it is you don't just throw around the idea of just tariffs across the board, and that's part of the problem with Donald Trump. Frankly, and I say this in all sincerity, he's just not very serious about how he thinks about some of these issues. And one must be serious.
Instead of answering the question, Kamala just pivots to Donald Trump. Being serious would include answering questions directly.
And have a plan, and a real plan that's not just about some talking point ending in an exclamation at a political rally, but actually putting the thought into what will be the return on the investment, what will be the economic impact on everyday people.
I think one thing we should note is that she didn't actually answer what would be a good tariff and what would be a bad tariff. Kind of getting back to that idea, Wolf, that Americans aren't necessarily hearing the type of specificity from her that they would want to.
Kamala replied to the question about what her specific plan is on tariffs by using talking points and saying Trump has no plan. This is one of the main problems with Kamala. She rarely answers the the substance of questions and instead tells stories and platitudes.
Donald Trump didn't implement tariffs across the board. He implemented tariffs on China. And then Biden came in, and this is what the question was about, and he doubled down on those tariffs.
Joe Biden has largely maintained and even increased tariffs that were initially imposed by former President Donald Trump, particularly on Chinese imports.
I think free trade has some serious consequences, and Trump was the first presidential candidate in many decades who at least acknowledged that.
Some of the problems with free trade include job displacement, wage stagnation, income inequality, and economic vulnerability, which are all things the American people are dealing with right now.
He's a fake populist. Everything that he proposed that was populist, single payer healthcare, this credit card thing, that no tax on the tip wages, they're all lies. He's not going to do any of them. How do I know? He was president already for 4 long years. He had time to do all those things. He never did any of the things that he promised.
Trump made several populist promises aimed at addressing the concerns of working class Americans. His follow-through was mixed. He achieved some successes in areas like trade policy and immigration enforcement, but fell short in delivering comprehensive healthcare reform and did not keep economic promises related to inflation and tax relief. According to the Washington Post, Trump told 30,573 lies during his 4 years in office.
She asked him to go all over cable news. Obviously, the campaign did, right? This is coordinated. He's not just going rogue. And tell everybody, I'm pro-business, I'm pro-corporations, I'm pro-corporations. And Donald Trump is too liberal, and he's too much of a Bernie Sanders, and he's too populist. You're helping him.
Yep.
You're helping him with his fake populism.
Cuban's opinion is from the perspective that Kamala Harris will raise corporate taxes within the framework of creating a more favorable environment for entrepreneurship and consumer spending. Cuban believes that Trump is more like Bernie Sanders because both of them would impact business dynamics, although with different policies, in a way that doesn't suit him.
What Kamala Harris is now branding herself as I'm not as far left as Biden.
Exactly.
Kamala is shifting away from progressive policies and engaging with the business community due to the public perception and polling.
I'm worried she's going to start slipping in the polls, and this feels like the old Biden team.
Biden's aides are now collaborating closely with Harris's team to ensure alignment on messaging and strategy.
On 2 different occasions, after he had endorsed her, she talked about how honored she was in the context of one of the interviews. She bragged about it. I do not think that's a good tactic. I would not be honored to be endorsed by Dick Cheney, a literal war criminal. Let's not align ourselves with Bush-era neocons. That's not a good idea.
Yes.
Kamala Harris's embrace of Dick Cheney's endorsement reflects a complex political strategy aimed at unifying opposition against Donald Trump, while navigating the historical baggage associated with Cheney's actions.
She is presenting herself as more moderate and more pro-business than we've seen from other Democratic candidates in recent election cycles.
Kamala Harris is strategically branding herself as more pro-business than some of her Democratic counterparts by emphasizing tax relief for small businesses, fostering partnerships with the private sector, and advocating for investments in manufacturing and technology.
Go make your case. I don't know why there has. I do know the Biden team is not smart. So
this is the time for bold policy proposals that turn people on and make people want to show up and vote, even if you don't mean it. This is the time for bold policy proposals that when they fail, you can say, oh, those darn Republicans blocked me from doing it.
She's done fine in the interviews. She's done plenty fine enough that I would send her to do 10 more, 20 more.
Kamala Harris is actively making policy proposals, giving interviews, and engaging with voters as part of her presidential campaign.
I don't know why I'm seeing Mark Cuban on my TV every day and not Tim Walz. I don't know what happened to Tim Walz because he was, I enjoyed the Tim Walz show. I can't find it on my TV right now. So they need to get out there and just go bold with this.
Hashtag free Tim Walz. Where is he? Why did you put him in Joe Biden's basement? I mean, let him out. He was super popular.
Don't be afraid of him being too popular, folks.
While there may be perceptions that Kamala Harris is limiting Tim Walz's media presence, her focus on solo interviews appears to be a strategic decision aimed at solidifying her leadership role and clearly communicating her policy proposals. Tim Walz is relatively popular among voters, particularly within the Democratic Party and compared to his Republican opponent.
The only thing that works is voting for these Democrats and then holding their feet to the fire and kicking their butts every single day to fulfill the agenda they promised. We have to stay engaged 100% on these Democrats to make them do what they promised, because in my lifetime, guys, that's the only thing I've seen that works.
The failure of Democrats to fulfill their promised agenda is mostly due to money in politics. Internal party dynamics, economic challenges, legislative gridlock, focus on immediate crises, and public perception issues are also to blame.